You may ask, how did this tradition get started? I'll tell you. I don't know. But it's a tradition. And because of our traditions, every one of us knows who he is and what God expects him to do.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Let's Talk Torah. I am Rabbi Tzvi Jacobson with NRM Streamcast, so we'll spend our time talking Torah, learning stuff, and having fun while we learn. You can always send your questions and comments to our mailbag at letstalktorah@gmail.com, and of course, I will answer as many questions as I can. Or you can go to our wonderful webpage at letstalktorah.net. That's letstalktorah.net, no apostrophes. The archives are there, the news shows are there, place for questions and comments are there, and of course the all-important donate button that allows us, that helps us to continue doing all that great work that you allow us to do. And of course I do thank you in advance, and if you want to shout out birthday, anniversary, in memory of, all those things are fair game, and we're happy to do it. And we are still number 5 in the top 10 in FeedSpot's 10 best Jewish book podcasts. So let's keep that number, and let's get that number higher up there. Share the wealth. Let everybody know all about us. That would be amazing. So I don't know where you live, but it is freezing today. Like, I don't know what happened to the weather. 30s, 20s. All of a sudden this morning, it's in the low teens. And the wind chill is probably close to 0. And I'm getting my coffee, getting ready to study a little bit, and my son, who lately has been waking up early, so he can ask me his questions, says, "Oh, should I shovel?" I said, "Shovel? Shovel what?" And I go look out the window, and sure enough, there's a couple inches of snow. So I said, "Yeah, you can shovel. I'll go get the shovels for you." I shoveled the back area, warmed up my car. He shoveled the front. I don't know where this snow came from, but it is freezing outside. I think by the middle of next week, again, of course, it'll be in the 40s and everything will melt, but it's winter. It is winter. Now, I have to tell you, Jacob, on the other hand, he's traveling back to Israel. I imagine he did not see snow. I can't guarantee it, but probably he did not run into snow too often. So in last week's Torah portion, Jacob got married, has 11 of the 12 tribes, leaves Haran. Lavan chases him. They come to an agreement, and Jacob is now on his way home. His goal is to go back home to his father. For some reason, Jacob feels it necessary to send a message to his brother Esav, that brother that wanted to kill him on the way out of town. He feels it's necessary to send a message to that brother, "Hey, Esav, I'm back. I'm back." Like, he doesn't, again, he's going into Israel. There's only so many major ways of traveling, but you must travel in Esav's neighborhood. You could hang a left, go south, and go to your father Isaac that way. Like, why exactly was it necessary for Jacob to announce his arrival? It says, we have a phrase, "Let sleeping dogs lie." And Jacob clearly was ignoring that piece of information. However, there is a Zohar. The Zohar says that Jacob understood his only chance at reconciliation with his brother is while Isaac is alive. As long as Isaac is alive, there's this outside possibility that perhaps he and Esav can come to some kind of agreement where Esav is not running after him to kill him. Perhaps Esav is going after the blessings, and he thinks that as long as Isaac is alive, he can get the blessings, but once Isaac is gone, so it's all over. He's just going to kill Jacob and be done with it. whatever the case may be, Jacob has decided he must confront his brother. He's not hiding, he's actually sending messengers. Now, there's an interesting debate if these messengers were real angels or if they were people. And of course, there's always those in the middle. It was a little bit of both. There were people messengers, there were angel messengers. The word used in the Torah is an unusual word. If I want a messenger, I say a shaliach. Shaliach is a messenger. The Torah word is malachim. He sent malachim. Now, generally, the word malach means angel. But again, it could mean a physical person as well. So both possibilities are on the table. In any case, he sends the following message. He says, Im Lavan Garti. I lived with Lavan. So first of all, the word Garti is famous. Garti is the numerical value of 613. I kept the 613 commandments. He didn't really keep all 613. First of all, no individual person can keep all 613. Plus, he wasn't honoring his father. Plus, he wasn't living in Israel. But his point was that whatever I could keep, I kept everything. And if you believe in the power of our Father's blessing, so you know that he said, as long as I'm keeping the Torah, you got no shot. And I'm telling you, I kept it. So why bother? If you're concerned about the blessings. If you're not concerned about the blessings, and I don't think you should be, says Jacob, because I got cattle, livestock. That wasn't the blessing. Blessing had nothing to do with animals. The blessing was crops, with produce, land, rain. I got none of that. So in either case, you have nothing to worry about. Others say a little differently. As I lived with Lavan, the king of the shysters, the king of the tricksters, somebody who will take your shirt off your back and anything else he can get from you. And I came back wealthy. I got his daughters. I got wealth. So I defeated Lavan. So don't think that I'm a pushover and that you can come and just take whatever you want. I've already dealt with the king. And that's Lavan. I dealt with him. If necessary, I'll deal with you. But since I'm a nice brother, I'm sending you presents. Not that it's necessary. I don't have to send you presents. But I am sending you presents. So that becomes part of, and a lot of times we find this, that they're sending a message and there's multiple nuances in the message. As I tell my class all the time, if you're a king or if you're an important person, either you get the nuances or there's no point in the conversation. We find this throughout the Talmud and other places. Kings got the message, and when they said their nuances, if you were incapable of comprehending the nuance, you didn't belong in that room. They weren't going to talk to you. Either you got it, or you're not part of the conversation. Anyways, so it says that Jacob was afraid. Very interesting question. My son was discussing this with me early in the morning when I had other things to study. But what are you going to do? Your son wants to ask you questions, wants to study with you. He figured out that if he wakes up early, he gets prime time. So I'm going to have to wake up earlier. Like, come on. Anyway, so it says Jacob was afraid. So the question is, what's he afraid of? We already saw in last week's Torah portion that when Jacob saw Rachel, he ripped that stone off the ground, the one that it took a team of shepherds to roll off, and Jacob had no problem lifting it off. He's a super strong fellow. Has no reason to be afraid. So, of course, everyone could always be afraid. Maybe Esau will kill me, or perhaps Rashi says, I'll kill others. And that he didn't want. Jacob did not want to kill others because, as we've said, certainly in this Torah portion, I don't show you I'm strong because I can beat you up. That is not what makes me strong. What makes me strong is I could beat you up, but I don't. I'm willing to be peaceful. I'm willing to figure out a way to work it out. If the only way I win is because I beat you up, I have no strength. That's not strength. Okay, I have muscles. But strength, we talk about strength of character, that's when I don't beat you up. That's when I don't have to take a gun and shoot you. That's strength. So, but why would Jacob be afraid? So we mentioned in passing already, whether he didn't have the opportunity to honor his father, whether he didn't have the merit of living in Israel, and perhaps his sons were not as good as he perhaps thought they were. In other words, God had already promised Jacob earlier that he's going to take care of him. But a promise to a righteous person only has value if he stays righteous. As if you're that same righteous guy, then you deserve to have that guarantee of protection hang around. But if you do not keep up that level of how you serve God, your level of spirituality, your level of goodness, of kindness, of doing what you're supposed to do, if you don't keep it up, everything's off the table. It's interesting, King Solomon, when he dedicated the temple, he made a very interesting prayer to God. For the Jewish people, if they come to the temple and they pray and they ask for something, so either you do listen, God, you don't listen, they do deserve it, they don't deserve it, God always has the right to say no. But King Solomon said, but a non-Jew, if he comes to this temple to pray, God, you got to do whatever he asks. Why? Because a Jewish person has a relationship with God. A child has a relationship with a parent. A child will be okay, hopefully, if the parent says no. You don't always get what you ask for. You have the right to ask. You can always ask, and you could be told yes. You could be told no. You could be told we'll try. Not much different. I spoke to a donor today, and the donor made a pledge earlier in the year, and I had actually asked for a raise earlier in the year, and now we're at the end of the year. So he calls me back today. I'm going to finish up the guarantee part of the pledge. That check is in the mail. But there's 2 weeks left to December. He said, let me get through the rest of my responsibilities. Let's see what's left. And if possible, I'll help you out with the final part of your ask. So I can be told yes, I can be told no. I'm fine with it. But the non-Jew who's going to go to the temple and he's being told that this is God's temple and there's a real God and he takes care, he can't handle being told no. So King Solomon actually says, God, when the non-Jew comes to the temple, you got to give them whatever they ask for. You got to really wonder, like, if people really understood this, like, why not take advantage? And the answer probably is that they didn't really understand what King Solomon had sort of put into the parameters of service in the temple. They didn't understand it. They're lost. Which, again, leads to the ability that the world wouldn't protect the temple from marauding armies. Like, why wouldn't you protect it? Get whatever you want over here. Okay. So Jacob has a 3-part plan to deal with Esav. You need to know in the times of the Talmud, when they would have to deal with Rome, right? The great Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Gamliel, those people that lived during and after the destruction of the temple, when the Roman Empire was in power, and they ruled over Israel, so you had to deal with the government. Rome was always considered Esav. So whenever they would deal with Rome, they always learned this week's Torah portion, because we're going to watch what Jacob does, and whatever Jacob does, we'll do the same. Jacob is showing us, telling us, teaching us, this is how you deal with Esav, this is how you deal with Rome. And it worked for Jacob. It'll work for us. So there's a 3-part plan. He's going to send presents. he's going to prepare for war, he's going to prepare with prayer. 3 things. And you need all 3. The Torah calls it a gift. You would call it a bribe. But the fact of the matter is that when you deal with Esav, when you deal in those days, Rome, whoever Rome became, the first part was bribes, presents. Again, you don't like to call it a bribe, you call it a present. I'm a teacher, and we discussed this. So around Hanukkah time, parents will send presents. Is it a bribe? Or is it a thank you? Or is it both? And is there anything you can do about it? And is there any reason to put a stop to it? All good questions. But however you want to look at it, you want to call it a present, you want to call it a bribe, whatever you want to call it, when the Mir Yeshiva during World War II escaped to Shanghai, what happened was there's a lot of famous stories about this. The Japanese were not looking to annihilate the Jewish people. As a matter of fact, they had a whole plan that they wanted to have a lot of Jewish people because they felt, it's so funny, there's a book called The Fugo Plans. It's in this book. The Japanese didn't want the Americans to get involved in the war. So they figured if we're nice to the Jews, America will be nice to us. Why did they think that way? Because they thought even the president was Jewish, even though his name was Roosevelt. But they actually thought his name was Rosenfeld. And they didn't believe his name was Roosevelt. They thought that was like that he modernized his name. So in any case, when that school, I think 400 people, made their way to Shanghai, so like always, they're gonna have students. People are roaming the streets. There's curfews and stuff. People get in trouble. And one time, a student was out, and it was after curfew, and he tried to bribe the Japanese soldier. And the soldier was so angry by the police officer that he threw him in jail. And the head of the school had to come and get him out of jail and take care of it. So the student asked the teacher, he said, I don't understand. The Torah in this week's Torah portion, by Yishlach, says that you give presents. Part of the way of dealing with Esav is to give a present. He said the Japanese are not Esav. So it's true that presents, bribes works for some cultures, but it doesn't work in other cultures. And therefore you made a mistake. Part 2 of the plan was, and we'll get back to the gift soon, but part 2 of the plan was to prepare for war. How did he prepare for war? So he split the camp in 2. We don't know how he split it, because in the end, they got back together. But the plan was to split into 2, to have 2 camps. And if Esav will attack one camp, and it seems Jacob's going to make sure he'll be in the front camp, the other camp will escape. So I always wondered, what do you mean the other camp will escape? Esav's army will wipe out camp number 1, then Esav's army will march towards camp number 2. What do you mean it's going to escape? But the fact of the matter is, and Jacob obviously knew this, throughout Jewish history, there's always been a safe haven for the Jewish people. Always. We're spread out all over the world. And even if they try, look at Nazi Germany, even if they try to annihilate the Jewish people, it just doesn't work. There's always that second group that escapes. So Esav, who may have started this idea that he's going to annihilate the Jewish people, but the plan was to have 2 camps. One camp will survive. That concept of one camp surviving exists through today. So why it works, I can't tell you why it should work. But the fact that Jacob set it up created this concept, I guess. Created this fact that even if one group is attacked and destroyed, the other camp survives. And again, you find this throughout history. You even have the Talmud talks about that the Romans wanted to do their own annihilation. And one of the advisors says to the king, he says, but you don't rule the whole world. So you're going to wipe out the Jews here. What about the other Jews? So a waste of time, your plan. So the king says, or the Caesar says, you're right, except you made a mistake. You're not allowed to best the Caesar in an argument. So I won't bother with the decree because you're right, there's no point. But since you beat me, we're going to have to execute you. And on his way out, there was a lady that said, "Hey, poor guy, you saved the Jewish people, but you won't get rewarded. You're not even Jewish." Doesn't mean non-Jews don't get rewarded, but not the reward he deserved. So he circumcised himself on the way to be executed, and that's that story in the Talmud. So again, Jacob appears for war. He splits the camp in two, but the truth is, once Jacob meets up with the angel, which we're gonna get to, once Jacob defeats Esau's angel, he now knows that Esau can't defeat him. No point in having two camps. He brings everybody back together because we know when they meet Esau that they're all together. So again, part one is gifts, part two is war, and part three is prayer. So just to get back to the gifts were different animals, groups of cattle, of sheep, of goats, of camels, and the people bringing the gifts also had some type of coinage or jewelry in their hand, and they didn't all come in one big group. It was staggered, because if I give you staggered presents, it looks like I give you much more than if I just push everything at once. So when they came, so again, we discussed before, was it real people bringing it? Was it angels bringing it? But there is a medrash. The medrash says, when the angels got to Asa, they started beating him up. This, by the way, is always a problem. This is debatable amongst the great rabbis. Maimonides at the top, and Nachmanides. An angel is a spiritual being. So the question is, does this spiritual being, this angel, have the ability to take the form of a human being? This is a great debate. Maimonides happens to say it's not possible. Therefore, anytime it's about angels, there's dreams. Nachmanides says it's no problem. They could take on this physical, they could somehow become flesh and bones, and the Barbanel is somewhere in between. But anyways, so the Medrash says that they started beating up Esau, because how are you going to fight an angel? And the soldiers said, come on, angels. I don't know if they saw the angels or not. Maybe they understood there were angels beating up Esau. You can't fight with Esau. He's the grandson of Abraham. And the angel said, who cares? Beat him up. And then they said, he's the son of Isaac. And the angel said, who cares? Beat him up. And then they said, he's the brother of Jacob. Oh, he's the brother of Jacob. Okay. He's one of ours. In other words, there was a message obviously being sent. And the message being sent was that we know that you have your group of soldiers here that are looking to go fight with Jacob. That's very nice. But don't start up with Jacob. He's from us. He's with us. Right? Be careful. And prayer. So Jacob remains alone, it says. He had his whole family cross a certain river called the Nahar Yabok. And he goes back for the small jars. Jacob goes back to get the small jars because the righteous recognize that if God gave it to us, it has value. Talking about small jars, so I saw there was a student at one of the schools, and he was very talented at calligraphy. Very talented, beautiful handwriting, flowery if you need for invitations or for certain designs. He was just beautiful. But he wanted to sit and study all day long. But people would come to him and say, could you write this for me? Could you write that for me? So the question is, if I'm able to sit and study all day long, am I supposed to be using my talents? Or forget those talents? So interesting enough, I believe it was Rabbi Gifter who said, you see from this week's Torah portion that nothing gets wasted. Yes, of course, the most important is the Torah study, but If you are so lucky that you have a talent, could be singing, could be helping, could be studying with people, could be teaching, could be fundraising, whatever your talent may be, even a small talent, beautiful artist, beautiful calligraphy. You can help people out even on small things. You should always make sure to always continuously use your talents. And I do hear the music in the background. I just could not tell if the music was playing, but the music is playing. And I hope you enjoyed it. Short and sweet. Thank you, of course, to all my wonderful sponsor listeners. Thank you to the production team. We have Al in the back today. I hope I've left you some food for thought. Until next time, you've been listening to